Hello and welcome back to another episode of Injustice For All MMA. My name is David, and this episode is for UFC Fight Night Cannonier versus Imavov. As you know, this this recording is 10 years late, but that's beyond the point. We'll get through with it. Let's start off with the fact that there are no injustices. No one got robbed. There were some close calls, a lot of split decisions just randomly in the prelims, but we got past it. Thank God that no one got robbed. Let's start with the first one. The first fight of the night, where I thought there was going to be a robbery just by the way they were talking about it, really. Dos Santos versus Tomar. Tomar, the first Indian woman to fight in the UFC, so that's cool. Clap, clap, clap. Congratulations. I had this 29-28. Tomar. First 2 rounds for Tomar, last round for Dos Santos. Throughout this entire fight, the commentary is talking about when Laura Sanko starts talking about the striking, or starts talking about the judging, that's when my brain goes into beep, 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 beep. What the fuck is she talking about? Because there's a certain point where Tomar is outstriking Dos Santos, and she then starts to level out Tomar's attacking the legs, but she's getting hit up top, and those strikes matter more. Let's forget about the fact that, yes, that's true, but she's not outstriking her. It's not as though they're equal on strikes and these are head strikes to leg strikes. Then I guess we have an argument there. But no, Tomar's outstriking her in the first 2 rounds. So in the first round, Tomar outstrikes Dos Santos by about 4+ strikes. Second round, she outstrikes Dos Santos by 3 strikes. Again, the strikes are a small amount, but relatively speaking, in both rounds, she's outstriking Dos Santos throughout the first 2. And then you go to the third round where Dos Santos finally kind of, towards the end of the third round, she kind of puts it all together really and outstrikes Tomar by 10+ strikes, and that round belongs to her. You go to the judges' scorecards where, I don't know, they just got all really, really goofy. Sol D'Amato, he gives all 3 rounds. Wild. He gives all 3 rounds to Dos Santos. When I say wild, I mean fucking wild. 30-27 he gives to Dos Santos. Honorable mention, it's a terrible scorecard. We then go to Derek Cleary, who, when they mentioned his name last, I was thinking, okay, he scored it in the right place. No, he scored it in the wrong place. He has the correct scorecard. They're just all jumbled up. He gives the first round to Dos Santos. Okay, he gives the first round to Dos Santos. First of all, honorable mention. This is a weird scorecard. He gives the first round to Dos Santos, who gets outstruck. He gives the second round to Tomar, who outstrikes Dos Santos by a lesser margin than she did in the first round. So make it make sense. It makes no sense, but whatever. Then the last round he gives to Tomar. Tomar loses Tomar loses the last round. Like, plentiful. Like, by a lot. And he gives the last round to Tomar. Just craziness. And then we have Matt Jones, who gives a 30-27 to Tomar. Also honorable mention here. All 3 scorecards are ridiculous. Gives the first round to Tomar. Second round to Tomar. That's fine. Gives the last round to Tomar. Make it make sense? It makes no fucking sense. We move on. Next honorable mention is Moura versus Gomes. I really like this fight. I'm a fan of Gomes. Denise Gomes. It's Moura versus Gomes. Big fan of Denise Gomes. She's really good. I had this 30-27 for Gomes. Guys, this is nothing but a 30-27. This is nothing but a 30-27. If it's anything other than a 30-27, barring 10-8s and that, even though there was none in this fight, then you should be sent to the favelas. Because I was watching this intently, and there's no way you can pick a round for Moura. We'll go through it. We have a 30-27 Gomes. In the first round, Gomes had a reversal. She outstruck Moura on the feet. She also had a takedown. Gomes had a reversal from the takedown that Moura had. All right. Moura had a takedown with very little ground, but I mean, she was so inactive on top. It was incredible. Gomes was very active on bottom. I mean, she was outstriking her from the bottom. in conjunction with that, she was outstriking Moura on the feet. That round belonged to her entirely. Gomes also had a submission attempt at the very start of the round. Gomes had a submission attempt. That round belongs to Gomes. We go to the second round. Moura has 2 takedowns. She does nothing with these takedowns. Zero with these takedowns. In fact, after she gets a takedown, she gets outstruck from the bottom there. She gets another takedown, she gets outstruck from the bottom there. On the feet, in the clinch, Moura gets outstruck. She loses this round. She got outstruck everywhere in this round. Everywhere. You go to the third round, Moura gets a takedown. Doesn't matter. She does nothing with the takedown. Denise Gomes outstrikes her everywhere again. 30-27. You go to the judges' scorecards. And Mike Bell, he has a 30-27 for Denise Gomes. Junichiro Kamijo, 30-27 for Denise Gomes. Chris Kinman just thinks that grappling is king and doesn't understand how to score cards. He gives the first 2 rounds to Moura honorable mention. It's ridiculous. It's nonsense. Let's start off with the fact that that's not accounting the submission attempt, not accounting the work that Gomes was doing on the bottom and even on the feet. Moura got outstruck in all 3 rounds. What is he watching? Okay. Also gives a second round to Moura. Ridiculous again. Last round is the one he gives to Denise Gomes. The last one he gives to Denise Gomes. The sluggish, weird round. Insane. Whatever. Honorable mention to Chris Kinman. And those are the scorecards there. You go to the next honorable mention. By the way, before we even get to that, Felder was talking during this fight, and he thought it was 1-1. And that's because the scorecards were coming up from the online section where they were just all over the place. It shouldn't have been. It really shouldn't have been. But I was astonished to hear that Felder was like, it's 1-1. What are you talking about? Anyways, next honorable mention, and that's Lee versus Rosa. Okay, I had this 29-28 for Rosa. Another split decision, Lee. I mean, Lee just continues to get split decisions, except this wasn't even like a close thing. This wasn't close to where you could argue this fight for Lee in any capacity. 29-28 for Rosa. Last 2 rounds are for Rosa. The first round is for Lee. You go to the first round. All right, we're going to go to the first round. You go to the first round, and Rosa has a takedown. That doesn't matter. Lee has a reversal, and she drops and outstrikes Rosa on the feet. And she also had a little bit of ground and pound, too. So that first round belongs to Lee. The second round is where Rosa finally understands that Lee can't strike on the feet, and all she has to, and just stay off the ground, relatively speaking, right? Second round, Rosa outstrikes Lee by about 10 plus strikes. In the third round, she gets 2 takedowns. And she outstrikes Lee on the feet. This fight. I mean, even before she got the last takedown in the third round, she was winning that fight. She was winning that round handedly. Regardless, we go to the scorecards. Where Saul D'Amato, his scorecard is the correct one. It's 29-28. His scorecard reflects mine. Derek Cleary, his scorecard reflects mine. And then Rob Pope just hold on, I'm reading this real quick. What is this? This is white judge. Anyways, Rob Pope just totally tanks it. Gives the first round to Lee. Gives the second round to Lee. She got outstruck in that round. I don't know what you want. And then gives the last round to Rosa. Honorable mention to Rob Pope. Just bad scorecard. Go to the next honorable mention, and that is Katona versus Butler. I had this 30-27 for Katona. In the first round, Katona had a takedown with ground and pound for 3+ minutes. Second round, he had a takedown again for 3+ minutes. And then in the third round, he outstruck Butler on the feet, and he had ground and pound for about a minute plus. I mean, he there's no argument here on who won this fight. You go to the scorecards, and Chris Kinman has a 30-27, Saul D'Amato has a 30-27, and then Derek Cleary has it 30-26. He gives a 10-8 in the second round. It's an unnecessary 10-8, really, but whatever. I'm not even going to complain about it. You go to the next honorable mention, and this is Baez versus Soriano. This fight should have been stopped in the third. I understand that Soriano ran out of gas after he was punching 20,000 times to the head, unanswered shots. We'll talk about a later stoppage also. This fight should have been stopped. It wasn't stopped. Again, it's not the same ref that stopped the main event, but it's insane that this fight went on. I also want to mention something that, like, there seems to be a pattern, or not a pattern, but a pre-fight knowledge of some of these fighters. Herzog in the main event was telling Imavov to close his fingers, and he told him to close his fingers not because he just saw his fingers, in my opinion, but because of many previous fights that Imavov has where his fingers seem to find a lot of fighters' eyes. That's the reason Herzog was so on it. That's a good thing. My problem here is, how come we didn't have that same sort of feeling towards Baeza, who in his last however many fights, he's been on a losing streak now. This guy does not react well to strikes. I mean, it's time for him to wind it down. He doesn't react well to head strikes, and this was a perfect example of him taking way too many strikes to the head unanswered. And yet this fight wasn't stopped. This fight could have been stopped and no one would have complained. Nobody would have complained. Nobody would have said, oh, he's still moving, he's still up, he's still walking, nobody would have complained. Back to the fight, though. I had 30-26 for Soriano, last round being a 10-8. First two rounds 10-9 for Soriano. You go to the descriptions here. Go to the descriptions if I can find them. Soriano had 2 takedowns with ground and pound in the first round. Baeza had a submission attempt. It wasn't in. I just put it in the disclaimer, but it wasn't in. It wasn't in. His knee was past. It wasn't in. That's all I can really put in there. It wasn't in, but it was a submission attempt. He had like 2 submission attempts technically, but whatever. You go to the second round, Soriano had 2 takedowns with ground and pound for about 3+ minutes, and then in the third round, Soriano had a takedown with ground and pound for 4+ minutes, possible 10-8. I did give one. He spent basically the entire round just punching Baeza. He slowed down a couple times, but he just kept punching him. I don't. Come on, what are we talking about here? We go to the scorecards. Okay, we go to the scorecards, see, and Chris Kinman, he has a 30-27 for Soriano. That's fine. Saul D'Amato, he has a 30-25. He gives the last 2 rounds a 10-8. I only think the last round is a 10-8. Listen, I get it. I won't complain. I had a 30-26. He has a 30-25. That's fine. That's cool. And Derek Cleary also has a 30-25. So that is what that is. You go to the next honorable mention. And that's Rosas Jr. versus Turcios. I had this a 10-9 with a close marker in the first round. A 10-9 for Rosas Jr. Rosas Jr. gets a submission win in the second round. Close marker on the first round. In the first round, despite getting outstruck by Turcios, Rosas Jr. had 3 takedowns with a reversal and some ground and pound. Turcios also had a reversal. I think Rosas did enough to win this round, but you could actually argue this round for Turcios, because the entire time Turcios is hitting Rosas Jr. on the ground. He outstruck him. There's no doubt about that. He outstruck him. The thing becomes Rosas Jr. controlling him, which is he had 3 takedowns. He even had a reversal. Turcios had a reversal as well, but Turcios just kept striking and striking. During every single takedown that Rosas Jr. had, Turcios is active on the bottom, active on the bottom, active on the bottom. He's active on the bottom. He's active even when he had a reversal. So you can make a case for Turcios, but my case was for Rosas Jr. You go to the judges' scorecards, and it's a little different. We have Junichiro Kamijo. He has a 10-9 for Turcios. Mike Bell, 10-9 for Rosas Jr. And then Saul D'Amato, 10-9 for Turcios. So I won't even argue there. And before we go to the main event, I want to talk about these gloves. So in the last event, the event before this, which was UFC 302, the new gloves were debuted. And in my head, I was watching the card and I'm like, okay, no one has like a knockout with these gloves. And halfway through the prelims, I was like, no one still has a fucking knockout. No one has knocked anybody out. So we go to Radtke versus Prates, where it's a TKO win for Prates, but it was a knee to the liver that gets him the TKO. So still no KO with these new gloves. And in my head, I was like, this is an interesting narrative that just popped up in my head all of a sudden. Are these new gloves like Bellator light? Not to say people don't get knockouts in Bellator. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that are these gloves affecting knockouts is what I'm thinking in my head. So I'm like, man, what's going on with these gloves? We then get to Marquez versus Reese. I believe I'm correct on. Hold on. Yeah, we get to Marquez versus Reese, where this is, I guess, technically where we actually get the first knockout. Now, it ends in a TKO, so Marquez isn't out, but at least we can say this is the first actual TKO with the new gloves, right? And so in my head, I'm like, we still don't have like an actual knockout, because we've had a bunch of people get dropped with these new gloves, but still no knockout. So no like out-conscious knockout. Okay, then we go to Ferreira versus Stoltzfus. It's an elbow. It's a spinning elbow that leads to the TKO win for Ferreira. Again, no direct knockout. Stoltzfus is not even out. He's out, but he's not out. You get what I'm saying. It's a TKO. Then we get to Reyes versus Jacoby. This is the closest we can call to it being a knockout with the hands, right? Reyes counters, catches Jacoby, while Jacoby's just spamming punches on Reyes, and he slowly gets knocked out. But he's not. I need an out conscious knockout. I need like a real knockout for me to count it. And so far we don't have one yet. Let's go to the main event. Cannonier versus Imavov. This fight ends in a controversial TKO win for Imavov in the 4th round. He later asked for Strickland. We don't need to see that fucking fight. Strickland beat him in 5 rounds. I don't even remember off the top of my head. 49-46, 48-47. He beat him. I think it's 49-46. He beat him well enough. He doesn't need to fight Strickland. I personally would like to see a rematch. I think this fight was stopped a little too early. Controversially, he probably should have let this go on a little bit longer, but it is what it is. Earlier in the night, Jason Herzog had a stoppage, a wonderful stoppage. He stopped the Stoltzfus fight against Ferreira, where Stoltzfus was out. I mean, once that elbow happened, Stoltzfus, maybe there was a couple punches, maybe there wasn't. I can't remember that far. But Stoltzfus was just turning away, and he was wobbling all over. Fine stoppage. Here, it's just not the case. It just wasn't the case, and they should have let the fight go on. He didn't. It is what it is. I give the first round to Cannonier. I give the second round to Imavov. I give the third round to Cannonier, and the last round, the 4th round, which the TKO was in, if everything kind of went the way it was going, it was probably going to go Imavov. It should have been 2-2 without the controversial decision, right? Barring that he doesn't knock him out. Should have been 2-2. Instead, I had it 2-1 before the 4th round. So we go to the first round where Cannonier gets a takedown, and he outstrikes Imavov. Second round, Imavov outstrikes Cannonier, this time by like 12 strikes. He outstrikes him pretty well in the second round. And then the third round, Cannonier outstrikes Imavov by about 3 strikes, but he outstrikes him well enough to win this round. And obviously, the controversial decision happens. Or stoppage happens. You go to the scorecards, where I saw the amount of his scorecard reflects mine. It looks exactly the same. It's correct. Derek Cleary, his scorecard reflects mine. It's correct. And then Junichiro Kamijo decides to be weird. He gives the last round to Imavov. Imavov was not outstriking Cannonier by any sense of the imagination. Regardless, he gives it to him. Honorable mention there to Junichiro Kamijo. And that's pretty much the end of it. Right now, all in my head is just the gloves and the stoppage. But overall, this was actually a pretty nice. It ended in lame fashion, but the main event delivered. I mean, the main card delivered. I was watching the prelims and I was like, this is boring. Not boring, but this is like, decision to the point where I was like pounding my head, like, no, can we get a finish? And we finally got finishes going into the main card. So thank you all for listening. The next episode's coming soon. Thank you all for listening, and God bless.